Addicted to the high, a dangerous place to be. Eric Hinman, influencer marketer, hybrid athlete, Ironman triathlete, angel investor, fitness, tech, and hospitality entrepreneur. In this episode of the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, I welcome my guest, fitness social media legend, Eric Hinman, to discuss his background in sports and fitness, his work in building brands in the health and wellness space, and his journey to becoming a successful endurance athlete through the use of the Maffetone method. Eric emphasized the importance of recovery protocols and maintaining a sustainable fitness routine, finding a balanced training regimen, and achieving a state of flow through engaging in skill-based activities. We went on to discuss the role of nutrition and supplementation in achieving optimal health and well-being. To support his recovery in all these athletic endeavors, Eric follows an advanced recovery regime that includes a combination of high-tech and performance-enhancing supplements. He emphasized the importance of using high-quality supplements that are backed by scientific research and recommends consulting with a healthcare professional and analyzing bloods before starting any supplement regimen. Throughout the podcast, Eric stressed the importance of recovery protocols and maintaining a sustainable fitness routine. He believes that recovery is just as important as training and encourages listeners to prioritize rest and relaxation to avoid burnout and injury. You can follow Eric on Instagram for more information and advice on how to achieve optimal health and well-being through a balanced approach to fitness, nutrition, and supplementation. You can find Eric at erichinman.com. Check out the show notes below. And Instagram, Eric Hinman. And again, the links are there. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from hownotodie.com.au. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by these guys, mystate.com, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients, it provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient, gut-friendly capsule. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, and welcome to my guest, long-awaited Eric Hinman. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Damien.
Oh man, you're welcome. Absolutely welcome. Look, thanks for your patience for organizing things. You're an interesting cat, dude. You're a live wire full of energy. Your social media. I love that you use videos for social media because it puts the message out rather than, quotes and photos. And your message is just, wow, just grab life by the balls and enjoy it. So in your words, and I know I've got it here, but can we get your words and what is it that you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's changed a lot over time. So right now, what I do is I help build brands. So I've built my own brands over time. And this chapter of my life, I'm helping a lot of others build their brands, specifically in the health and wellness consumer brand space. That's what I would do for business. But as far as what I do every single day, I would do the exact same things every day, regardless of whether I was getting paid to do it or not. So much of my day is based around exercise, recovery protocols, being outside, soaking up the sun, getting in aerobic exercise, lifting heavy weights, connecting with like-minded people, hosting and being a part of community-oriented events, meeting people, and trying to impact others, through channels like this, podcasts and, content creation. So ultimately, I find a lot of value in sharing some of these wellness protocols that have positively benefited me so much with others, so that hopefully, they can take away things and have it benefit them as well.
It's beautiful. I love how you said impact others. And just straight away, I've done my research on you and watched some of the social, but definitely watched some of the videos and what you've done. But you're impacting others shows that their altruism to help. And you beautifully said, I would do this for myself anyway if I wasn't getting paid. So it's brilliant. And right there, you're in the house of wellness. Your quote. What a beautiful thing. You got a massive home gym, the wellness center, biohacking, if you will, but I think that term's a bit misunderstood and probably misused. you even said lifting heavy weights. You've got a completely different background. So, you know, again, from your background for the listeners, 5 times Ironman, but you had this specific incident during one of your Ironmans that really changed things. So can you talk us through that start of the journey? Because I think that's probably where it happened for you, Eric. If I've read it correctly, you had the injury, and then you've ended up literally right here now talking with me, sharing all that beautiful information. Would you please be able to walk through that start of that path?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it dates back to elementary school and high school. I played 3 sports growing up. I ran cross country, I ran track, I played basketball, I played little league and senior league baseball. I played one year of football. So I guess I basically dabbled in every team sport that you possibly could in elementary and high school. And, back then it was very much about competing against others, wanting to place and wanting to win races. And, I think we're brought up in a society where public perception says success is competing against others and winning things and making more money than others and just competing on all of these things instead of living a life where you feel super fulfilled so that you're able to give back to others. So, went from team sports, very much competing against others, to more vanity-based fitness. In college, I bench pressed and did bicep curls and shoulders, never back squatted, never deadlifted, just very, very vanity-based. And, it was to look good with my shirt off on spring break. And then after that, I got pretty out of shape in my early 20s. I was sitting in a car driving 50,000 miles a year in my first business that I started, insurance agency. I was eating Subway, which is a fast food sub chain here in the United States, thinking that was healthy. I just didn't have education around, purposeful training and how to properly fuel myself. And then in my late 20s, I got into triathlon. I hired a personal trainer prior to that. So maybe when I was 26 years old, I hired a personal trainer. He gave me accountability and the knowledge to start getting back into aesthetically good looking shape, and also taught me a lot about functional fitness, squatting and deadlifting and thrusters and anaerobic conditioning. And then triathlon is what really taught me what training was compared to what exercising was.
Right.
Because, yeah, there was, I would sign up for these Wednesday night triathlons in my small upstate New York City. And I would typically, after a year of doing the sport, I would win these Wednesday night triathlons. They were short, they were sprints. And I had a lot of anaerobic capacity from doing these CrossFit type workouts with my personal trainer. And at this time, I had a 6-pack and I was lean, like I was looking pretty fit again. But there was this guy that constantly would beat me in races. Like I would beat him in these Wednesday night triathlons, but an Olympic distance, a half Ironman, he would have faster times than I would. So his name was Mike Corona, and I ended up hiring him as my coach.
That's
And
clever. That is, and
yeah,
that's humility, isn't it, as well?
it is. Yeah. If you can't beat them, hire them. So he taught me a really valuable lesson, and that was to slow down to speed up, specifically for endurance sports. He taught me what's called the Maffetone method, which is zone 2 heart rate
Oh, the
training.
math method. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yep. Yep. So under him, over a 4-year period, he had me back way off on my intensity so I could increase my volume and I could increase the duration of my workouts and ultimately build durability and build an aerobic engine, which are kind of the two ingredients to being a successful endurance athlete. And I went from running, I don't know, maybe a 8:30 per mile pace in 2010 at a 145 average heart rate to running in 2014 a 629 pace at a 130 average heart rate. And it was just from doing this zone 2 heart rate training for 4+ years.
Now let's touch on that, Eric.
Yep.
Let's just pause there in the journey, and just because it's so important what you're saying for so many athletes. And I know you're in that Ironman triathlete, endurance athlete world. So I know from my side, when I listen to someone like you, I'm on a podcast, I'm furiously scribbling and I go, what did he say? Let's dive into a little bit. The math method, it's not well known, but it's incredibly effective for the people that have the tenacity and humility to do it. And you said that because you had to tone down your training. You retrained yourself for 4 years. Could you just broad brushstroke what the math method is, and then people can go look it up and carry that on? Because I really want to hear it firsthand from a success.
Yeah, so I believe it is taking the number 180 and then subtracting your age from 180, and that'll generally give you about what your aerobic heart rate is. The best way to do it is to go out and run a 5K in an all-out effort and see what your average heart rate is, and then you can figure out your various zones based on your max heart rate. And it's probably
Beautiful.
going to fall somewhere between 75 to 80% of your average heart rate running a 5K is what your zone 2 training should look like.
Yep.
And 80% of my training during that time period in running was at that zone 2 heart rate. So
Wow.
very rarely was I running what I would consider to be fast during that time period. And what that allows you to do is you can increase your mileage because you're not going at as high of an intensity, and that's going to help you build durability. And running really is a durability sport when you're looking at, running a marathon after biking 112 miles or running an ultra marathon. Like, these are more just like, how durable is your body? And
Durable.
also being able to burn fat for fuel instead of carbs, there's a component of that as well. So
Yeah.
I got to a place where I didn't really need carbs for any workouts that were under 3.5 hours.
And
I
that
could
makes
just
sense, literally, just biologically. How much carbs can you smash through? I mean, yeah, I did a small circuit yesterday with the injury I've got, and 20 minutes, you're not going to replace it. Don't need to replace any sugars. It doesn't make
Mhm.
logical sense what's in your body.
Yep. Yeah. And your fat fuel tank is way, way up here, and your carb fuel, your glycogen, is way down here. So if you're really efficient at burning fat for fuel, you can go on fat for a very long time. Whereas,
Mm,
glycogen, you're burning matches. You just have a very small amount of glycogen, and you're going to have to keep replenishing that with,
yep.
sugar, carbs in order to continue performing at that output. So, I mean, for me, I was racing an Ironman at about a 137 average heart rate the entire time. My max
Wow.
heart rate was about 178. So, you can do the math on the percentage.
Yep.
But, I through that training, I was able to maintain 80% of my heart rate for a very long period of time. And there's kind of two components to being a successful endurance athlete. It's how high of a percentage of your max heart rate can you maintain, and how long can you maintain that for? So the
Exactly.
best athletes in the world, they might be able to maintain 84% of their max heart rate for 10 hours, and that's why they go faster. So those are the components. And to get there, it really is a lot of that just zone 2 training on the bike and the run.
That's beautiful. That's a really succinct way of putting it, and clear as well. Um, you remind me, I hope it's okay to say, of Dean Canazes. Um,
Mhm.
in your journey, you're 20 years old, basically a salesman traveling in the car, and then and Dean was the same sort of thing, literally not a yuppie. I don't know what you call someone in their 30s, stuck in an office, but he decided to put on his shoes one day and get free. And so that's a nice journey. It wasn't, you were a college athlete and just kept on going. You had to reconfigure yourself. And I think that shows a massive amount of self-reflection as well. But then alone being able to hire your competition and
Mhm.
then do 4 years of retraining your body. I really love that, and it's great to see where it's got to you now. So we're sort of 4 years into your journey. You're starting to race triathlon.
Mhm.
Where do you go now?
Yeah, I mean, Kona for me was the ultimate goal. I was very, very focused on getting to Kona, and triathlon became I'm just competing against myself sport to get to the Ironman World Championships. And I was able to get there twice. The first time I had a horrible race in Kona. That was my motivation to do it all over again the next year and get back to
Hmm.
Kona. And then I had a great race in Kona. I felt like, I had really accomplished my goals within the sport. And so this is 2014. 2015, I started to lose my passion for it. I didn't have that purpose anymore. I didn't have, that tunnel vision. I had sacrificed a lot during that time period in order to get to that place.
Yeah.
And um, ultimately I felt like I was going through the motions more than I felt like I was living life with passion and purpose. I was training 25 hours a week, and I just thought to myself, like, why am I doing this? And there were a couple years of, you know, separating my identity from being this elite Ironman athlete to, why am I still training at a high volume? And ultimately I realized that it was to be the best version of myself. Through those years, I unlocked a lot of mental clarity to understand what really made my operating system function at its absolute peak performance. And, it was exercise, it was recovery, it was a lot of these protocols that I adopted over the triathlon years to get to Kona, but it became more about being the best version of myself and feeling like my cup was super full from all of those different things through those years. And now I'm to a place where the things I do today are so much more for how I feel day in and day out than they are to achieve any kind of goal or to win any kind of competition.
Eric, it's really interesting hearing you speak. You know, your exercise modalities, your recovery modalities kept you going and successful through your Ironman training, and you're using those now. I don't know if you know Brad Kearns. He was back in the 80s along with Mark Sisson, and actually he's partners with Mark Sisson in the primal blueprint sort of way. But he was a top Ironman like you were. I think he did that as a long-term career, but he stated that he's like on the verge of like a success and injury, and when it comes together perfectly on the day, you can get that race win or the race second or third, but it was one or the other. It was either getting up to the success or the injury. Remember, it's the 80s. Much more clever now where you're at. You realized, hang on a sec, you need a lot of recovery. Really interesting that as well, interviewing Professor Nick Gill, coach of the All Blacks, or strength and conditioning coach of the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. Same thing with recovery. But he his new players, the 20-year-old guys now, in the 2020s, they actually come to him when they start and they say, Nick, what can I do to get an extra year in my career? Or what can I do to, when I finish my career, not retire broken like the guys used to do? So we're in a different sort of place. And the reason I'm painting that picture, not only for you, but really for the listeners as well, is you're all speaking the same language. So this recovery protocol, you're talking about this uh, impacting others with your skills and being the best version of you and wellness, those aren't sort of throwaway words. That's actually you knowing you need to live your best life in your own body. So what are these recovery protocols that you're now instituting into everyday life to be better?
Yeah. I'll touch on the overtraining aspect first.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Whenever you're competing at a high level in anything, you're probably flirting with injury. It's just a fact of the matter. And I realized that with Ironman, that I was too far in one direction, that I was neglecting strength training and anaerobic conditioning, and I was neglecting a lot of the recovery protocols during those years too, to be able to back up that high volume of training. So I'm so glad that I wrote that Ironman chapter of my life, but I'm also glad that I only did it for 5 years and I didn't make, a 15-year journey out of it, because at that level, you really are just constantly flirting with injury to be that fit. And that's a tough place to be for a long period of time. You can get away with it, for 3, 5, maybe 7 years. But I mean, that's why you see all of these guys getting injured. It's just kind of part of it, or being broken after the fact. So, my training now is much more balanced from a lifestyle standpoint, so that I feel good day in and day out. And I'm not, I'm here instead of here. And here is where like injury is just like right there. It's right around the corner every training session. And then as far as recovery, two things with that. So, it's easy to get addicted to the high from exercise, especially Ironman. You get addicted to the running, biking, and swimming. And again, that's a dangerous territory to play in, because you're talking 2-hour runs, 5-hour bike rides. Like, your body is really starting to break down after those time periods. So for me, finding the recovery routine, which we'll talk about, that I do now, the contrast therapy, it allowed me to find something where I got that same high, but without breaking my body down.
Could I
And I think
pause
that's,
that? Because
yeah.
on that exact thing, I'm literally thinking, why? I can relate. So I'm thinking, why do you get addicted to the high? I can relate. When I was in the special forces, I used to run from our camp to
Mhm.
Starbucks to get a coffee. But Starbucks was 10 kilometers away. So it was a 20K run for a
Mhm.
coffee. Why can you, or could you please explain for yourself, do you get addicted to the high?
Yeah, I mean that it's that endorphin rush that you're getting, that hit of dopamine. So you feel so good afterwards that you want that feeling day in and day out, and then it takes, you know, the longer and harder to get that feeling. You no
Yes,
longer get it from a 30-minute run. You have to run an hour. And once you're doing 2-hour runs, the hour run you don't really get that high from anymore. So yeah, it's just this kind of hamster wheel where you have to go further and you have to go faster in order to get that same high. And again, that's a dangerous place to be,
yeah,
from a dopamine standpoint. So
yeah,
the recovery protocols, yoga, like I think it's great to find a yin to your yang. Find something where you get a similar high, but without breaking your body down continually with that
beautiful.
same repetitive movement. So contrast therapy, I do it every single night, and it is typically 2 to 3 rounds in a barrel sauna at about 200 degrees, 20 minutes in the sauna, and then 3 to 5 minutes in cold water. We have ice barrels here at our place, and we keep the water generally this time of year. It's going to be in the high 30s or low 40s, just based on the cold air temperature. And every single day to help get rid of inflammation, but also the mental benefits from doing that are tremendous. um, just helping with anxiety, helping with stress management, helping build a robust immune system. There's a community aspect to it. We invite people here to our house every single day to do it with us, so you're having deep conversations, bonding with others in the sauna and the cold. So I like it from that standpoint as well. So I think there's benefits that go well beyond just the physical benefits of ridding your body of inflammation. There's mental benefits, there's community oriented benefits of it too.
Absolutely. It's stunning that you laid that in. And I don't go into these shows. I think I said at the start before we recording, I hardly put questions down even. I like a nice organic conversation because we get to know each other here and we bring out interesting things to me and hopefully the listener. But you said mental and community. I interviewed you won't know him. Dr. Dan Pronk was a former Australian Special Forces doctor, and he'd actually passed the selection, so he can speak the language. And coming out of Afghanistan and that, and mental health wobbles and things. But long story short, he's got a book called Resilience Shield. It's all the layers of the things you need for that resilience, and one of them is the social layer, and you use the word community. Beautiful. One is oh, I don't know what the fancy word is, but putting yourself doing hard things that don't break you, don't put you into the overtraining phase, exposing yourself well. And that's what you're doing beautifully there with the contrast therapy. You said mental health benefits, absolutely. And that's part of your wellness embodiment there. So really, really clever stuff you're doing with that. Um, we when I did interrupt you, and I do apologize, but it was an important point what you're talking about, getting addicted to that high and that being a dangerous place to be. Now, how are you're sort of transferring, chasing the dragon, as it were, but not going out and doing 25 hours a week?
Mhm. Yeah, so the balance now is anaerobic training, aerobic training, strength training. So typically, and this is still going to sound like a lot to most, and keep in mind that I still do compete in CrossFit age group and high rocks and various competitions, and I've been able to build a business around a lot of this. So the training now, 5 days per week, I'm in the gym doing CrossFit type workouts.
Yeah,
So it would look like complex lifts, back squat, pressing movements, deadlift, Olympic lifting. And then after that, it would be some kind of CrossFit Metcon. And then after that, gymnastics, accessory work, kind of more isolated lifts like a bodybuilder would do, just to strengthen the smaller tendons and ligaments. And
clever.
then 7 days per week, I do something aerobic outside, and that varies. It's generally no more than 90 minutes. no less than 45 minutes. And it could be running, could be mountain biking, road cycling, rucking, hiking, just something where I'm combining getting my heart rate up, being in the sun, being in nature. I tend to pick skill-based activities with risk associated over non-skill-based activities with no risk, like
Yeah.
mountain biking over road cycling and trail running over pavement running. I just feel like you're much more present when you're doing things like that. And the high that you get afterwards is even more accelerated than the high that you would get just from the exercise, because you have to be so in the moment. And I also like training mindset. Like, I think it's so important to do things where you're completely present so that you can be completely present with others.
Absolutely. It's really interesting speaking to you, Eric. And I never blow smoke, but you're very succinct in actually explaining it. A lot of people, when they're interviewed, and I know you're an old hand, they tend to put a lot of fluff into the answer, but you're very succinct in it. And I love that you've brought us to the stage of explaining all the things you do, because that's flow state. And I know you've got
Yeah.
some videos on that, but that flow state, I'm going to get it from the horse's mouth. I love that side of things. You said, you'll choose a skill-based thing with a danger aspect versus a non-skill with none, no danger, like road cycling. Um, can you please explain for the listeners brushstrokes of flow state and what you're trying to do there, and the benefits it's getting?
Yeah, flow state is just being completely in the moment, where you're not thinking about the past, you're not thinking about the future, you're just completely immersed in what you're doing. And that's such a beautiful place to be, especially when you're talking about endurance sports, when you're doing an Ironman. Like, you don't want to be thinking about, at mile 1, you don't want to think about the next 25 miles that you have to go. You want to be in the moment, enjoying that very moment. And that's flow. Conversations can be flow state, where you're not thinking about anything else, you're just completely in the moment with that person. And there's various things that can accelerate or get you into flow state. And some of them are, again, doing skill-based activities where you need a certain level of skill in order to get into the flow. Like, if I tell someone to go and snatch 225 pounds and never snatched before, like,
Wow.
they're not going to get into flow state doing that. So there needs to be some level of skill already in order to get into flow state.
Yep.
But there also needs to be some risk involved. I feel like that helps a lot with, again, just like being completely in the moment and not thinking about anything else. So mountain biking for me is one of my favorite flow state activities, because each time there's skill involved, but I have enough skill so that I'm enjoying it. I'm not thinking through, where to be on the bike or what gears to hit or when to hit the brake. It just all happens automatically. But there's incremental improvement every time I go out there, and it's technical terrain. There's risk involved of crashing, so you have to be completely present. You can't be looking around. Your mind can't really be wandering. You have to be in the moment with it. So yeah, those activities, they teach your mind to be present, so that when you're with your loved ones, when you're with employees, you can be present with them. And I feel like that's such a superpower. And also for achieving anything, having tunnel vision, being able to focus on one thing at a time, it's such a superpower in order to have success in anything you do.
It is, and also especially for the listeners, I don't believe you're talking tunnel vision as in can only focus on one thing. It's more the ability to take away distractions, to have it as a superpower rather than as a detriment, because it could be a detriment if you went the other way.
True. Correct.
Look, I love that you talked about the flow state, and it just made me think so much. So, for the listeners out there, the book Stephen Kotler, Flow State, some kind of Google search will get that.
Yeah, Becoming Superman, I think it's called.
Thank you. You're exactly right. Really interesting, but it just takes me back, Eric. We did that as kids. Remember when you're on your bike, just on the road, and you went over a curb? That was a bit of danger, and that gave us a bit of a hit. So maybe this flow state is taking us back to all those new experiences as a child that were risky behavior, and you overcame it, and you learned that new skill. The three biggest triggers for flow state are doing dangerous things, creativity, and altruism. And that's kind of what you're doing, and it's definitely what I'm doing as well.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I love that analogy of going back to a kid when, I would play basketball in my parents' backyard for 3 hours and pretend I was Michael Jordan and just be completely in the moment and loving life because, yeah, you don't have the pressures of the outside world on you. You don't have, the thoughts of public perception and stress and anxiety and all of these things that, creep in over time. So I think it's super important to practice things that allow you to be that inner child again, because I feel like that's a lot of happiness in life, is just doing things where you're completely present, being around others where you're completely present, and being in environments where you're completely present.
Okay, that's a mic drop for me, Eric. I must say, I'm quite stunned. I'll explain. Out in the backyard, and I was there as well, practicing basketball by yourself and sweating, but just going through it as a kid. And there's no worries in the world, and you're just doing it. There's no difference if you go right now at 35 years old, 45 years old, with all the life things that are going on. But when you go to do the thing for an hour, go to do the thing for 2 hours, those things don't matter. Those outside things do not matter right then and there. So why not be the kid again? You've actually taught me, and how many people in the world say, be present, be mindful, all these things. You just explained it with a very good example, example, not an analogy, of why that's important, because you can go back to that kid state literally right then and there. That's mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm. And, I think it's super important to design your environment so you thrive. And that's so much of me being in Colorado. I can mountain bike to the summit of mountains right from our driveway. It makes it easy to do the things I enjoy. Our
Yeah.
backyard, we turfed 1,200 square feet and built an outdoor gym. We have a sauna, we have a cold plunge. So much of our environment is built around doing things where we're completely present. And, same with friend group. I think that's really important too. Like, having really engaging conversations with like-minded people, putting yourself in situations where you can meet new like-minded people. Like all of these things are going to also allow for that flow state. So we can design our environments, we can design our lives in ways that we can more easily be in flow state more often.
What a beautiful conversation, explaining all those things, and such um, amount of depth compared to a guy jumping out of the ice barrel to climbing ropes. For me, I'm the same with the how not to die guy stuff. Watch that small video and then dive into what we do. Actually, gain all that information that we love, and you clearly love sharing that knowledge and that knowledge transfer. I'd I'd like to tangent a little bit. It's pretty related though to diet and or supplements or what you put in your body. I touched on supplements because now I've got to take some vitamin D. Now I've found out I've got a little fracture in a bone, so I'm going to increase some things a bit more as well as the environment. But would you please touch on nutrition and what you put in your body for where you're at now versus maybe what you did with the sporting career?
Yeah, definitely. So I think nutrition is super important. I think supplementation is the icing on the cake. For me, I mean, the top of the food pyramid is exercise. That for me yielded the most benefits by far, like moving every day, again, lifting heavy weights, getting my heart rate elevated, doing something aerobic, getting outside, getting sunlight. I put all of those to getting enough sleep. And some of these are a snowball effect.
Yep.
You exercise, you're likely going to sleep better. You exercise, you're likely going to have higher testosterone and lower cortisol. It can go the other way if you're overtraining, obviously, but a healthy amount of exercise and
Yeah,
movement.
clever.
So, so for me, nutrition is pretty simple. It's eating animal-based products and things that you can hunt, things that you can pick, things that we find in nature. It makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint of why those things would work well to fuel you. So I typically eat around the same things each day. I have some variation in diet, but it's generally animal-based products, fruits, vegetables. I do like honey. I like maple syrup. Those are my favorite things to add some sweetener into various things. And I typically build my calories throughout the day. So my earlier meals are less calories, and dinner is where I consume more calories. And the reason why I do that is for me, there's a direct correlation between food volume and mental clarity. The more I eat, generally, the less mental clarity and the less energy I have. Just think about eating, a big dinner with steak and potatoes. Like generally, you're kind of lethargic afterwards. Or Thanksgiving, what do people do? They lay on the couch and they watch football after. So I tend to eat, smaller meals for breakfast and lunch. That generally is eggs and or some kind of smoothie that I would have for my first two meals.
Yep.
And then for dinner, it's either red meat, fish, or chicken. And for a carb, I either do rice or potatoes. And then, in the evening, I might snack on some type of nut butter with maple syrup as more of a dessert. I'm really, really regimented for breakfast and lunch. I very, very rarely, if I'm not traveling, if I'm here in Denver, I very rarely go out for breakfast or lunch. For dinner, maybe 2 nights a week, we'll go out to a restaurant and I'll get dessert. It'll veer off the plan. So kind of that like 85-15 rule. Of 85% of the time, it's very controlled. And I'm eating things I enjoy. Like I love having a good steak in the evening, and I love the smoothies I make. I love having eggs and turkey sausage. So I don't not look forward to the meals. I'm not nibbling on lettuce and broccoli by any means. I'm eating very exciting, satiating meals. I avoid processed food. Avoid chips, avoid refined sugars. We all know this, and ultimately it comes down to putting it on autopilot as much as you can, because we all face decision-making fatigue. And we're a product of our environment. So, if our pantry is stocked with chips and in our fridge we have cupcakes and cookies, like I'm going to eat them. I'm just like anyone else. I know that they taste good, and I know I'm going to get that little dopamine hit from eating it. So, I think ridding your environment of those things is going to help. And then having your own structure with eating. Like I eat at the same times each day. I just don't have to think about it. I'm not going out to restaurants 3 times a day, having to make decisions around food. It's very controlled. I know what it is. I know I'm going to look forward to it, and I know how I'm going to feel afterwards.
That's interesting. You're saying some clever things leading up to that, but then the mic drop, how you're going to feel afterwards is brilliant from having that structure. Autopilot for those 2 meals, I never really thought of that. And I think it's really simple, because you touched on decision-making fatigue. The last thing you want to do is get up in the morning, you have to start to figure out what the hell am I going to find for food, like they did in the hunter-gatherer days. That's really, really clever and again, succinct. I never thought about food volume and mental clarity, the connection. I mean, definitely feel it, never considered it, but would you put that down to digestion issues as well? Having a massive dinner at breakfast, and the digestion stress that would put your body under?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it takes energy to break down that food. So the energy is going somewhere, and it takes a lot of energy to have a conversation like this. So where do you want the energy to go? So I think from a scientific standpoint, that's why it makes sense that it would be that. Obviously you don't want to be to a point where you're in this like tremendous caloric deficit and you're hangry. So I make sure I have enough calories in my system, I try to get about a gram per pound of protein.
Yep.
For body weight. Protein is definitely the focus. That's probably what I think about more than anything else. And then I will use carbs to fuel my morning workout. I might bring a bar with me and have 30 grams of carbs or a banana to fuel a heavy lifting session or to fuel some kind of anaerobic workout. And competitions also are going to differ a bit. I'll fuel with more carbs for a competition. Might eat a little bit more prior to a competition, depending on how long that competition is. But yeah, everyday eating is generally just that. It's building calories throughout the day, focusing the most on protein, and having the largest meal in the evening when I don't need as much mental clarity after that meal.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. You also talked about supplements being the icing on the cake, and you're 100% right. Again, I was putting that little shake together this morning. I think I'm going to have to take more collagen now because I got some bone repair. And I was like, is collagen a supplement? Is it really? Well, back in the day, we would have got collagen from the bones and the tendons and all that good meat eater stuff we're doing. But hey, 2023, I got to drink the stuff, you know. So
Mhm.
icing on the cake. Supplementation, anything you want to talk about there with for helping others as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the things that work the best. I mean, I get a lot of stuff sent to me. I work with a lot of companies. So, the supplements I take, um, I, I wouldn't recommend for everyone
Right.
because we all only have so much money to spend on supplements. I think the most important thing is to get blood work done and to see what you're deficient in. So
That
you
is
know if you
perfect.
need if you need vitamin D, if you're deficient in certain things, and then you could come up with the best supplement protocol for yourself. So
Yeah.
I mean, the things where I feel like I get the most bang for my buck are creatine. I've taken creatine for years, 5 grams pre-workout. I don't do any loading phase. I always seem to get stronger whenever I'm taking creatine, and generally by getting stronger, it means that you're putting on some muscle mass.
Yeah.
Caffeine, I make coffee every morning. I love caffeine. It's one of those things that you 100% feel. And for me, it puts me in, a good mindset of, okay, ready to perform each day.
Yeah.
I like beta alanine and beet powder, or L-citrulline. So beta alanine is going to be a something that allows you to push a little bit harder. It buffers lactic acid. So I like taking that as a pre-workout. And then L-citrulline, beet powder, those are going to be things that will boost nitric oxide. So, produce more blood flow. Beet specifically, they've done a lot of studies around showing that it helps with endurance performances. So
Yeah.
for that reason, I love beet powder. I also take colostrum, which is the first milk a mother produces for her offspring. Makes sense again from an evolutionary standpoint of if it's a nutrient that a mother is passing on to her baby, to help with their immune system and to help build a mucosal barrier, that it would be something that is good for us to take as adults. So I do take colostrum. Athletic greens I take as well. Kind of more as like fill in the gaps if I'm nutrient deficient. It has lots of nutrients in it. It has adaptogens. It has they have a vitamin D3 and K2 supplement.
Yeah.
And then at night, I take a supplement called Beam Dream, which magnesium I think is something that's great for deep sleep. L-theanine, something great for deep sleep. Nano CBD, it combines a lot of different ingredients into one, that I use for deep sleep in the evening. And I don't know if any of those are sold or not in New Zealand or Australia, but
Yeah.
these are US based companies. But again, creatine, caffeine, beta alanine, those would be the three staples for performance. And then magnesium, L-theanine, those would be the ones that I would, and ashwagandha is another good one too, that I
Yeah.
would recommend to like reduce cortisol and to help with sleep in the evening.
I love that you touched on the why there. I just got my shot of caffeine here. Just delivered it.
Nice.
I love using the Black Rifle coffee mug because veterans. But the
Yeah.
coffee we use is Purity coffee. I don't know if it's from America.
I do know
Um,
Purity Coffee. That's cool.
yeah, beautiful guys. 70 tested for 70 lab tested for 72 different toxins before it gets bagged.
Mhm. Yeah, that's incredible.
Um, Look, you and I are much the same. It's stunning and shouldn't be surprising. we speak the same language. Creatine's been a staple, and creatine monohydrate. For those people listening, it doesn't have to be fancy. The studies were
Yep.
done on creatine monohydrate, and some companies going to try and sell you their $100 creatine. Um,
Mhm.
Protein. If I can't eat this stuff, I'll put some protein powder in. Uh,
Mhm.
Caffeine, as I said, for us, we try and do a half decaf, half normal mix, and sometimes you didn't get a good sleep. Sometimes you get to do more. Collagen is in the coffee, so that's how I get my collagen. Beetroot powder, and then the greens powder you mentioned over here. We got one state STAIT, same thing. Beautiful greens with adaptogens to lower
Mhm.
cortisol.
Mhm.
Hopefully, that helping free testosterone in the
Mhm.
future. And you touched on sleep. You touched on the one you've got there for sleep. Same deal. If I need more sleep or better quality sleep and things aren't going good, I'll use the Navy SEAL formula, sleep remedy. But
Mhm.
really interesting. The only thing that I'd like to highlight that you've got there is the colostrum. You spoke
Mhm.
about the mucosal barrier. Could you please
Mhm.
explain why that's important in maybe gut digestion and overall health for people as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's this barrier that helps to protect against pollutants, that helps protect against contaminants, allergens, and it's something that over time gets broken down just with our modern society, unfortunately, with a lot of the pollution in the air and the allergens and chemicals that we ingest,
Yeah.
and also helps with gut health, which is so important for how everything is operating. I mean, there's so many studies coming out about the mind gut connection, and how much of your gut is responsible for happiness. So yeah, you want to have this strong mucosal barrier, and you want to have strong gut health, so that ultimately it leads to good performance and a good mindset.
Hell yes. I'll just tell a quick story. There's a very cool guy, John Meadows, bodybuilder. Unfortunately, passed away, but he was an incredibly clever guy. Knows about all the health side and natural side, but yes, also um, started to use performance enhancing drugs for the bodybuilding. Um, However, he actually got taken to ED with a gut issue and had to have part of his colon removed because he hadn't looked after his gut. Interesting
Well,
thing with bodybuilding, the gut is the same size when you're 200 kilos as it is when we're 80 kilos here, Eric. So we've got to take care of that gut.
definitely.
Yeah. Look, that's just been amazing. All the things you said, and I'm stunned at the synergy. Is really, really cool to see. Um, Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom so openly. It was great to see people coming in and out of the house. You literally showed by example the community side of things, but also how respectful they all are of things, which was great. I love watching your stuff there. It'll be in the opening video and opening audio, but where can people find more about you, and where do people go to see more of you?
Yeah, definitely. Instagram is the best place. That's something I actively manage and respond to all DMs. So my name, Eric Hinman. I'm on TikTok as well, YouTube, erichinman.com. But the best place to interact with me, to ask me any questions, is just shoot me a DM on Instagram. I love helping people. I love talking about this stuff. So no question is off limits.
That is beautiful. Look, thank you again. It's been absolutely like drinking from a fire hose, shoving it all into that time frame, and it's an absolute honor to hear it from you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Eric, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks for having me, Damien.
Nice one. I'll hit pause and we'll have a chat. Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former Special Forces operator, and check out my new project for 2023 at hownottodie.com.au, where I've combined all my Special Forces training and police officer experience to help others. Thanks for watching.